What's up folks, CrushSG here with another Genshin Impact video. This is the follow-up from my previous Noelle DPS guide, where I will be diving deeper into her stat priorities and doing some theory crafting. If you haven't checked out my DPS guide, be sure to check it out. There should be a card pop up somewhere to the top right corner or at the end of this video. I will also link it in the description below. Okay, so the build guide seemed to sit well with most folks. Thank you for that. It did, however, seem to cause a little confusion for some, which I'll be clearing up as we go along in this video. I'm also super excited to get this video out because I'm recording this right after the Klee banner dropped. So now I officially have a full C6 Noelle. Thankfully, I didn't have to pull like a billion times to get the 2 more constellations that I needed. And can I just say that my mind is absolutely blown by how much stronger she got with her C6. I mean, my level 80 C6 Razor is nothing to sniff at, but my level 70 C6 Noelle handily puts him in his place. So if you watched my last video, you'll know that building Noelle for DPS got me through floor 9 and floor 10 prior to recording that video. Well, now I've cleared floor 11 too, and while it wasn't the smoothest run, I did get all 3 chambers in one try, and I'll be playing some of the footage of the run in the background throughout this video, but here's a quick preview. Okay, so I'm going to start this off by clearing up some of the confusion caused by the previous video, as well as a few previously speculative aspects of a C6 Noelle, now that I have a C6 Noelle. So first, I might have gone a little bit too hard on the whole full attack aspect of the build in the previous video, which has caused some folks to think that I was saying defense is completely useless for Noelle. That's completely not my intention. The point I was trying to make was that building Noelle for full defense isn't optimal if you want her as a primary DPS. And you'll do much better building her for full attack with defense substats. Now, I did say this exactly at some point in the video, but I guess it was just more like a quick passing statement, so some of you might have missed it. But anyway, I'll get into the specifics of that later in this video. Now, the next thing is the 50% defense increase from Noelle C6 is in fact additive to the defense gained from her burst. Now, I was previously unsure of whether it was additive or multiplicative, i.e. multiplicative would be 50% of the amount gained during her burst, whereas additive would be just a flat 50% of her total defense added to the amount gained. So it is in fact additive, and my Noelle gains a total of 118% of her total defense to her attack power, and that's with a level 9 burst talent. And lastly, C6 did indeed boost my overall uptime of my burst massively as expected, and I now have actual numbers to show for it. If you remember, I estimated my burst uptime with C4 at about 30 to 40%. With C6, I physically timed it, watching the footage of my floor 11 run across all 3 chambers, and I averaged it out, and what I found was I had about a 74% burst uptime. So that's almost double, or in fact more than double, what my initial uptime was at C4. Now this can be improved a little more with some gear reshuffles on my supports and stuff. Maybe I'll get 80%, maybe 85%, but I don't expect to be able to realistically achieve a 100% uptime anytime soon or ever. It's just something that's too situational. Nevertheless, 80-85% uptime is huge. That's pretty much all the time, and it opens up a lot of possibilities for building Noelle for DPS as we go along. Okay, let's get down to business. Now I'll be exploring two main points in this video. First, in the best possible scenarios and gear, which build has the best DPS potential. Second, to better understand Noelle's stat priority so we can make more informed decisions about how to gear her for DPS or otherwise. So I've cobbled together a spreadsheet to help me along, so let's go through the spreadsheet. Okay, so this is the spreadsheet that I use for Noelle, and in the top left corner is basically all the sources of stat increases that you can get, flat increases, percentage increases, and whether or not you can get them for attack and defense respectively. Starting with this right here, the reason why the numbers are in red is because these are the base stats that you'll get as a level 90 character, and I had to speculate a little for level 80 and level 90 because I couldn't find any hard info on any website that listed Noelle's base stats at level 90. So I would say take it with a slight pinch of salt. It's probably plus minus 10 for defense, plus minus 5 for attack. We'll see when someone hits level 90 and actually posts the stats. And next we have base stats. Now base stats, so we have base stats, flat stats, and percent increase. Right? Base stats is basically the white numbers that you see on the character screen. Everything else, flat stats and percent increase, goes into the green stat. Alright, so for base stats, you get it from the weapon for attack, but you don't get it from anywhere for defense. So that there is no way to increase your base defense from anywhere in the game with the exception of the 2-piece set bonus of Defender's Will. That increases your base defense by 30%. So that's something to consider if you're going for full defense. Next, we have sources of flat stats. For attack, you get flat attack from the feather, and you can get flat attack from substats, from artifacts. For defense, you can get it from substats and artifacts, but you can't get it anywhere else. You can't get it from the feather. As for sources of percent increase, you can get it from substats, artifacts, and character depending on the character. For Noelle specifically, you can't get an attack bonus from the character because that's not what she specializes in. She specializes in defense, so after certain ascension tiers, she gets a slight boost in her defense. Okay, over here to the substats notes. Substats gain per upgrade per artifact. What this means is for defense, every level of upgrade you gain between 5 to 7%. For attack, you gain between 4 to 6%. For flat defense and attack, I think you gain between 15 to 20. How I got these numbers is I've looked at every single artifact that I own. I have not seen anything less than 5%, anything more than 7% per tier, anything less than 4, anything more than 6, anything less than 15, and anything more than 20. We're talking about 5-star artifacts here. So I have not seen values less than this per upgrade tier, so this is what I'm working off. And what that means is the theoretical substat maximums per artifact, assuming you got all of the upgrades into your desired stat, which is really unlikely, you'll be able to get 35% defense, 30% attack, and 100 flat defense or attack per artifact. Now, an important note here is an item cannot have the same substat as its primary stat. What this means is if you're talking about, say, the feather, which comes as with flat attack as the primary stat by default. You can't get any other primary stat on a feather. That means that the substats of the feather cannot roll flat attack either. Likewise, if you had attack percent as the primary stat on your artifact, it cannot roll attack percent as the substat either. Now, the next part, we're going to talk about burst talent scaling. So this is what burst talent scaling is how much defense gets added to to your character's attack during Noelle's burst. Okay, so we have the talent level 1 to talent level 15. The reason for this is because C5 adds 3 levels. Most talents cap out at 12. Alright, so it adds 3 levels, and therefore with C5, you'll be able to see these numbers. That is 86%, and this is once again all in red. This is just an estimate. What I did was I took the pattern 40, 43, 46, 50, 53, 56, 60, and I just continued that number 63, 66, 70, and so on. I have discovered that at level 9 on my character screen, it shows in-game actually, it shows 68%. So these numbers could be off by a couple of percent, but this should put it in the general ballpark. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the different builds, the different ways that you can build Noelle and how they fare on average when it comes to DPS. A lot of this is A, anecdotal, B, speculative. We're just trying to speculate what the best case scenarios are. This is not an indication that you must build this way. You can only build any one of these ways. Once again, disclaimer, it is speculative. This is just for information's sake, for understanding's sake. Alright, so first here we have full attack. What I mean by full attack is you went for attack for everything. You went for attack in the primary stat. You went for attack in the substats where possible. If you went for full attack, this would be the damage or the attack value during your burst. This would be the attack value outside of your burst. This would be the estimated average DPS without C5. And this would be the average estimated DPS with C6. Okay, so this is how we're going to go through everything moving on. If you went full defense, this is the value. If you went full attack primary and defense substat, that means attack percentage for the artifacts, and you went with defense percentage for the substats. The reason why I went with percentage is because when I did the math, it is always better where possible to go for a percent increase versus a flat stat increase. Alright, so we are assuming best case scenario here. So if you went full attack primary and full defense sub, you would be going with full attack from the artifact primary stats, and you would be going for defense percent for the substats. And if you built it this way, this is what you get. Conversely, if you went full defense primary and full attack substats, this is what you'll get. Alright, so with all these numbers, let's do a quick comparison. Is going full attack, meaning artifacts, substats, attack all the way, is that the best way to go? Now, while it might give the most damage out of burst, as you can see here, it doesn't necessarily give the best average DPS, factoring in burst uptime, burst downtime. Okay, it does give a significantly higher average DPS when you don't have C6, because your burst downtime is significantly more before you get C6. So if you didn't have C6, you could consider just going full on attack, both in main stats and substats. But what you'll notice is, as I stated in my previous video, you might want to consider going for attack primary, meaning the primary stat on the artifact is attacked, and going for full defense substats on the artifact. As you can see the numbers here, this produces the most impressive numbers theoretically. Right, so if I were to build my Noelle, and I am building my Noelle, this is how I will build her. I will go for attack primary stats with defense substats. Now, don't split too many hairs when you're building your character. It's very RNG. You don't have to get 100% defense percent as substats. You could get flat defense as well. It still works. You know, the differences here, it's not that great when I worked it out. We're talking about maybe a 10% DPS difference if you went for substats versus a percent increase. So really, any defense stat would be good to have as a substat. And of course, these are not the only substats that are useful. You have crit and all that, which I'll go through in a bit. So this is full attack primary, full defense sub. This is what I would go for personally. The next option you have is full defense primary and full attack substats. Now, as you can see, this produces very similar numbers to this, maybe 5%, 7% less DPS. The reason why this is not as optimal as this is because it is harder to build. If you're building a DPS character and you're going full attack as the primary stats, you're guaranteed a portion of your stats as your DPS stats, which is your entire purpose. But if you're trying to build a DPS character and you're collecting gear that is full defense primary stats, you're relying on the massive RNG of substats to get your attack up. And while that does eventually get you to more attack, as you can see, it has the potential of getting more attack. The chances of you being able to do that because of RNG is near zero. So I would most definitely go this route if I wanted to build a DPS Noelle. Alright, so DPS scaling from other stats. Like I mentioned, attack and defense, not the only two stats that you should consider. Alright, number one, you have crit and crit damage. These two stats, they scale DPS universally. That means all the time. And it scales DPS proportional to their respective values, i.e. 30% crit at 100% crit damage. You know, you can do the math. It works out proportionally. Two would be energy recharge. Energy recharge scales only your burst DPS, and it does so by increasing your burst uptime. Defense percent from weapon bonuses and effects, like for example the white blind. This scales only the burst DPS additively with the character's total plus defense percentage. For attack percentage from weapon bonuses and effects, it scales DPS universally, additively with the character's total plus attack. Next we have per damage percent, and this is a pretty rare stat. Usually you'd find it on artifact set bonuses and certain weapon bonuses like the Serpent Spine, artifact bonuses like the Gladiator's 4-piece set. So damage increases to specific skills or universal damage increases like the one on the Serpent Spine, they scale DPS universally, multiplicatively. And lastly, we have geo damage, and geo damage increases scale only burst DPS multiplicatively with other non-geo stats. Okay, so what does this mean? So it's okay to not get attack or defense as the substat. You could do very well with something like crit. And there's a big difference that I need you guys to notice right here is only burst versus universal. This is important enough on its own, and it gets even more important if you do not have a C6 Noelle. And if you don't have a C6 Noelle, you really want to go for stats that increase your DPS universally, because you're not going to be spending 100% of the time in your burst. And that means crit and crit damage, attack percent, straight up universal damage. You do not want to be going for geo damage. You do not want to be going for energy recharge and defense. Now, when I say you do not want to be going for it, I only mean that if you had the choice between one or the other, you would choose universal stats. If you didn't have a choice, it is still nice to have any one of these stats on an item. Alright, so just wanted to be very clear. I'm not crapping on any of these stats. I'm just saying certain stats are more optimal. Okay, so last part of the spreadsheet, because this has been long enough. It is impossible to attain 100% uptime on Noelle's burst skill without C6. I'd give best case scenario 40 to 50% without C6. That's the very best case scenario. Building full attack or primary attack is almost always going to be better for sub C6 DPS. Next, with C6, in my opinion, even with the most ideal conditions, the best burst uptime one can realistically hope for is about 70 to 80% with the current endgame content. There are simply not enough mobs, or mobs die just too slowly to fully utilize the C6 time extension. You'll need at least 80% burst uptime or above going full defense just to equal the DPS output of any other build. So why put yourself through all that trouble? Building full defense is almost never going to be the best way for DPS. I think that's just a reiteration of all the points I've made. And lastly, this is just an opinion piece. A lot of it is oversimplified. The calculations are oversimplified. There's a lot of assumptions, there's a lot of speculation, and a lot of this is anecdotal. I'll be more than happy to be proven wrong here. This is not some sort of challenge or competition. We're all trying to gather info, and if someone happens to find out, hey, I have a full defense Noelle and I'm doing like 1 billion DPS because I have my burst up 200% of the time, you know, I mean, if someone discovered that was possible, found a way to do it, use this item, use that artifact set, build your supports in this manner, 100% burst uptime guaranteed, I'd be more than happy to be proven wrong, and it's just public education, right? So only time will tell, honestly, how to truly maximize DPS on Noelle or any character for that matter. Okay folks, so this brings me to the end of today's video. I know theory crafting can be a bit of a dry topic, and I assume if you're still here, you probably main Noelle or are interested in maining Noelle as a primary DPS, and I hope this was helpful for you to, in terms of stat priorities, understanding how Noelle stats scale a little bit better, understanding how you should be going about choosing your artifacts down the road. So if you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, thumbs down works as well. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take care.